This is Hoops Forum, presented by Radius Athletics and a Quick Timeout podcast. He's Randy Sherman. I'm Tony Miller. Randy, congratulations. I don't know if you didn't know this. I kept it from you from the very beginning when we were talking beforehand. This is a milestone episode.
What's
This
that?
is episode number 40.
40. Big 4-0. That's awesome. It's been fun, man. I've enjoyed it. I hope we keep going and keep growing.
Yeah, it's been a good time. Special episode, not just because of the milestone, but also because we have Coach Doug Brotherton, coordinator of player development for Tulsa women's basketball, joining us today. But before we get to Coach Brotherton, a big thanks to our sponsors over at 323 Sports. We're in the middle of winter and temperatures for a lot of us are cold. I'm sure they're still warm for Randy, although it looks like he's wearing a hoodie today.
Got my new hoodie on. Let's go.
Looking nice, looking sharp. 323 Sports has some great options for outerwear for teams and also for those in your athletic department on staff. To find out more about what they can do for your program, visit 323sports.com, or you can contact a rep, sales at 323sports.com. They'll be sure to do it right for your sports program. As I mentioned before, Coach Brotherton is our guest today. Coach, thanks for making some time in between some of your duties there at Tulsa.
Yeah, excited to be on here with you guys.
Welcome, Doug. Glad to have you. I hope you brought some hot takes.
Randy, why don't you go ahead and kind of introduce what we're going to be talking about, and then we'll start with our hot takes.
Well, like a lot of coaches, I follow Doug on Twitter, and he posed a question that I thought was thought-provoking. I don't know, it's been a week or two ago, maybe, that as soon as I saw it and kind of it made me think, and I sent it to you, Tony, and said, hey, this might be a good idea to kind of make a Hoops Forum show out of like, just sort of some things that coaches think matter more than it actually does. Things we tend to maybe like overrate or overvalue as coaches. So, with that in mind, what I thought we could do is get Doug on. He after all wrote the tweet and I know he's a good guest on things like this. So we're glad to have him. And what I thought we could do is just sort of like go around the room, if you will, a couple times and throw out a couple of things that we would put in that blank space. Coaches think blank matters more than it actually does. So I'll let you take it back, Tony, and be the good host that you are.
I would guess that maybe Coach Brotherton's above me with this, but I'm not below subtweeting when it comes to stuff like this. So without you don't need to call anybody out with this, but did you have something in mind in particular when you tweeted this, Coach?
Yeah, I think sometimes I'm in a new role this year where I get to take a step back, and it's my first time not being a head coach, and just get to kind of evaluate things. And was having a conversation with a coaching friend of mine, and just talking about kind of what's important. It's that time of year where you're losing for the first time. Sometimes, we've been fortunate we haven't done that yet, but when you start losing games, you start trying to think about what's important. And I think we just add and pile on, and we think something might be really important, but maybe it's not. And so that was kind of the premise, and then the reasoning behind throwing that up there, and the responses were great. It was really fun. And, I love that it generated conversation. That's, I think, what we all enjoy on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Randy, you were one of the first ones to comment, and I appreciated your comment. It was something that I've learned something from you about. But why don't you go ahead and start us out? First thing that comes to mind when you see that statement, coaches think what matters more than it actually does, and your thought was?
My first answer was in-game coaching. Like this sort of like idea that a lot of the important parts of coaching happen on game night. And I don't think that's to be true. And I would say as we proceed, before my inbox gets blown up or my mentions get shattered, like the point of this exercise is to not say something doesn't matter, like in-game coaching and decisions you make, especially in close games, maybe in special situations, like those matter, and they matter a lot. But the exercise that Doug proposed was like, this matters less than coaches think it does. It's not to say it doesn't matter at all. So let's get that out there. So like this idea that like the coach as the whiteboard wizard who's like got this, special gift of like coming up with these tactical genius maneuvers in the moment. Like that's like fan think, I think. And I think sometimes coaches actually think that way. I would say that it matters less than like your in-game coaching ability, like maybe you're just not that great at that, but like you're great at like designing good practices or really motivating your team or getting your team in terrific condition, or you're a good teacher of your offense or defense. Like those skills to me matter more than like your tactical wizardry in the moment. I think this is maybe a thought that a lot of coaches are uncomfortable with, but like a lot of games are decided like before we even get off the bus. Like they just are. Sorry. So, your whiteboard wizardry will not save you tonight if you're up against a coach who values the other days of the week more than game night.
Yeah. There's two things that come to mind. The first is just those that are familiar with John Wooden, when he used to say he wanted his teams to be so well prepared that he could go up in the stands and sit. I think there was more to it than just being prepared. I think he knew that once the game started, you really have very little impact on things. And the second thing is something that you've said to me before, Randy. I don't know that we've said it online before, but there is this idea in coaches, I think it's just in all human beings, but we're very hopeful about things. And that same hope that projects them to have a 20-win season every year when their team really is realistically only going to win 3 games that year is the same hope that motivates them that if we're in a tight game or if something's not going our way in a game, I'll be able to draw something up or make an adjustment and it'll have a dramatic impact and change the course of a game. And I just don't know, like, to, what Doug's implying here. It's not that never happens. It's just that doesn't really happen very often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agreed. Randy, I got a kick out of your response. I don't know if you saw, it was a couple days later, I get a response from a former parent of a player of mine that responds, "That whiteboard." So clearly she's not a big fan of all the plays and stuff we throw up on social media, but I got a kick out of that. It was really fun.
Yeah,
so
that's a good one.
I'm with you. I think that's definitely something. I'm glad you started off with that hot take. Hopefully some of the coaches are staying with us.
Bring it. I'll defend my take. I'm okay. I can do that.
Doug, you want to go next?
Yeah. So an assistant of mine's heard me say this 100 times. So he was one of the first responses. And I do think a lot of times we as coaches, because it makes us feel good, overvalue pregame and postgame talks in the locker room. I think that outside of in the pregame, kind of reminding the kids, to Randy's point, about what you've done to prepare up until then. Maybe a motivational speech helps you go out there, and you still got to warm up before you play. So it's not like, it's got to be real special, if it's carrying in, to the third and fourth quarter of a game. And so, I think we overvalue that. The other thing, and at the end of each season, we have our team write like a letter. It's an anonymous letter. They don't have to put their name on it. Things they learned, things they liked, things they didn't like, ways our program can get better, and then things we can be better at the next year. And in one of those letters years ago, I had a kid, just kind of not so politely let me know that the long post-game talks I was giving, they weren't hearing anything I said. They couldn't remember anything. I think we forget how emotional a game can be for our players. And so that tirade we go on in the locker room to set them straight, if you were to ask your players the next day, what did we talk about? They probably have no clue. They just know coach was pretty upset. And so, again, there can, like you've said over and over, there can be great value in pregame and postgame talks. But I do think at times we overvalue it because as coaches, it makes us feel really good about the message we deliver.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'd go even a subset of that and stepping away from the games and more into like practice, but even the amount of time that we talk in practice. I saw something the other day. You're probably good for about 30 seconds is all, until kids start tuning you out, or until just the brain is kind of like at max capacity and can't remember things anyways. And I coached one time with a guy who is like a brother to me, but in his younger years, when it came to coaching, especially like those halftime talks, he literally talked for 15 minutes. And the kids, they didn't go execute on anything that he said after about the first 30 seconds because their brain just couldn't take it. And whether that's in a game at a halftime talk or a pregame, postgame, or even during a practice, I think a lot of times there's one of two people. Usually the first one is the coach, that maybe the young coach that wants to show how much he knows. And the second one who has good intentions and wants to correct 50 things, but the kid's not ready to handle. The kids aren't ready to hear all 50 things. And that's where you have to have the mindset of this is more of a marathon than it is a sprint. And I don't need to fix everything either before the first game or before second semester starts or before Friday's opponent, because they're not going to remember it anyways, and it's probably going to lead to frustration on everybody's part.
All right, Tony, it's your turn, man. What do you got? What's your fill in the blank?
All right, my big the one that first came to my mind. Coaches think that conditioning drills matter more than they actually do, and this is again just goes back to my coaching hero John Wooden. But as I've listened to other coaches talk as well, and as I've come to value the games approach a lot more, is that there's practice time is just so valuable. I remember talking, I had Swin Nader on my podcast about a year ago, and he was talking about Coach Wooden, and he said he didn't even ever think about running sprints, and we didn't even think about, well, we're not running sprints, we're not going to be in condition. He said at the end of each practice, we were completely gassed, and we knew, like the saying that he had, that I want my practices to be harder than games. He said that's not something that he just wrote in a book. Like, that's actually how it was. We were so tired, and just Coach Wooden was so ahead of his time. He was playing. He said we basically played games all the time. We were practicing and playing 5-on-5, and they didn't do as much like 3-on-3 and 2-on-2. He said, but he said we were full court, that infamous 2-2-1 full court press that they won with for all those years. Like, he said, we practiced that the entire practice, and we never once had to do conditioning drills. I know sometimes we squeeze conditioning in, or we make kids run lines, but I've frequently found, maybe I'm just speaking myself, I make guys run when I'm mad, and it makes me feel better. And that doesn't do anybody any good. It just makes me feel better temporarily. So I would really encourage coaches to examine why are you doing, or how are you incorporating running, sprinting? Are you using that as an excuse for you actually just kind of blowing off steam, or are there some better ways that we can go about incorporating that to prepare our players physically for their actual games?
That's good. I think that's fair. I can definitely relate to thinking about my time as a player. There was a portion of practice where we were, even in football, we were running from one sideline to the other in the Texas heat, trying to get ready for the games, and things like that. I don't know. I felt like that was maybe more like showing who was already in shape rather than getting someone in shape, yeah, I'd be lying though if I didn't say that at some point during my time as a coach, I didn't make my team run. But yeah, it's probably overhyped and overvalued.
Doug, you got anything?
I would just agree. That's a shift I made over the years. When I first jumped into coaching, same thing. Get on the line and toe it up was said way too often. And now, and even when we run, if we lose a drill and we have a consequence, it's with a basketball, And so I just think that, to your point, we're much more efficient with our time because we're layering in multiple skills while still getting our conditioning.
Well, and Doug, too, now you're at the collegiate level. You guys have a strength and conditioning coach and a person dedicated that they get to do that. I think that'd be really cool. I don't want to be the bad guy. That guy can be the bad guy. So,
yes.
So he makes you run and he makes you jump on boxes. In high school, I had to be that guy, and I didn't get to pass that off to someone else. So that'd be cool because you got to get in shape, and sprinting and explosive movement like that is the most, is like a powerful exercise that should be part of an athlete's repertoire is their explosive power and speed, but you get someone else to make them do that at another time, and your focus can be just on basketball.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're really lucky there. I also honestly, our sport performance coach does a great job with making it small competitive games. I mean, we've had days where we've done capture the flag, and that's a conditioning day because they're running and they have to move, and there's certain restrictions that force that. But that's another thing too that's so great it's not necessarily a basketball games based approach, Tony, but I mean, we get better results out of the kids when it's not just run, when there's actually something to it that makes it competitive and fun.
More motivated, I think. Yeah, for sure. All right, Randy.
My turn again.
Next round.
Okay, I'm throwing out hey, I'm bringing the hot takes. I'm not holding back. So I remembered the assignment, and the assignment was something that coaches think matters more than it actually does. And my answer is free throws. and I duck and dodge the hate coming my way. But I think the few years of really studying some of the statistics have taught me that a team. I worked with a lot of coaches who their team doesn't really have a great free throw rate as far as like how often they're getting to the line, and they have a really gaudy win-loss record to the good side. Like they're winning without being a team that's on the free throw line a whole lot. And that's what I mean. That's not to say that like in a close game and, you're trying to ice the game in the late part of the fourth quarter or something like that, or second half, and you got to make your free. They obviously matter quite a lot in context like that. But like in the macro grand scheme of things, we might overvalue those a little bit. And I'm only basing that on the observation that I've seen lots of teams get outperformed from the free throw line and win a game, and not only win it, but win it in a blowout fashion because they create a lot of turnovers, they get a lot of offensive rebounds, they shoot the ball well, and they play great defense. That they didn't get to the foul line a whole lot just didn't matter. So I would say that that's my answer, and I'm prepared for any inbox hate that comes my way.
I think that one's easy because it's low-hanging fruit. We've conditioned ourselves as coaches to immediately look at that piece of paper that they hand to us. For us, Doug, after every 4
we lost
minutes,
by 4 and we missed 16 free throws. Yeah.
So we're looking straight at free throws.
We also gave up 30 offensive rebounds.
Exactly right. I think free throws, shooting, and then turnovers, and then maybe we look at rebounding. And we won't rehash the whole thing, but we've talked several episodes about the 4 factors and how to weight those. And to your point, just because you lose one doesn't mean you'll lose the game, but there is a weight that goes along with it. And if you can make up in other areas, but the weightiness of free throws does not warrant probably some of the amount of time that's spent on practices. Doug, how do you guys practice free throws?
I mean, we blend them in a little bit into our practices, but a lot of it, honestly, is our kids on their own. We're pretty lucky. Our players take ownership of it. It's something that we've, our leaders on the team track it, and we do kind of chart it. But similar to that, I mean, as much as we want to, we have a goal for how many times we want to get to the free throw line in a game. We're currently 8-0, and I think we've hit that goal 4 times and haven't hit it 4 other times. It's really a lot of it depends on the defensive philosophy.
And the officiating. I mean, like,
yes,
it could be that as simple as that. Like you've got a crew that calls it tight or loose or whatever.
Yeah, and we shoot a lot of threes, and I think right now we're like 3rd in the country in 3-point field goal percentage. So for us, we'd much rather drive and kick than go get clobbered and split a pair. Let's go get the wide open 3 that's 1 pass away. And so I think that's a great answer, Randy. I would agree a ton. And I think if you would have said that to me 5 years ago, I would have fought you on it. So
yeah, like I was on a one-on-one session with a coach in my mentoring program recently, and well, I should say it was not recently. It was probably back during the summers before the season. And he wanted to look over his stats from the last year. The guy had a 24-4 record and was worried about his free throw rate. And I was like, you just woke up wanting to worry about something today, or like, what's the deal? Like it seems like it's working out okay for you. Can we move on? So that's my answer.
That's good. All right, Doug, next up.
Whew, Randy, I'm going to bring some heat on this one too,
Bring
and
it.
I know coaches are going to light me up, but I'm going to preface just the same way Randy did. It's a good play what I'm going to talk about, but I think it's overvalued, and I would say taking charges. And I know that's going to just crush the soul of a lot of people, and this is pretty brave.
RIP to your mentions.
I know, right? It's gone. It's toast. But, the one thing I do feel like obviously taking a charge is a great play in basketball, but a lot of times I don't think we look at both sides of that. I think it's probably, we want to say it's a 50-50 play. Let's say 60% of the time, though, they call a charge. That's great. You're going to have some games where one of your best players gets in foul trouble because they decide to step in and take a charge. You can be really good and win a whole lot of games without having to take charges to the same thing as free throws. But to me, ultimately what taking a charge is it's rim protection. And I just view it that way. I think that we've had some teams when I was coaching at the high school level with a ton of length, and I'd rather just wall up and make players try to finish over us. And I didn't want to risk our bigs getting in foul trouble because we're flailing and taking a charge. Just be big, wall up. But we've had some teams that are really small, and we have some depth with those teams. And so maybe that's a team where we're going to want to take charges when they drive the lane. I think it's a little bit of a risk reward. If you've got 7 players in your rotation that you're highly dependent on, and you're saying you want to be a team that's going to take 5 or 6 charges a game, you better get number 8 and 9 ready. They're going to have to play. You know, and I think sometimes, again, I understand the identity piece, the toughness. I value all of that. We want our kids at Tulsa to take charges. Like we get fired up when they do. But again, I personally view that as rim protection. And every time someone takes a charge, we go crazy and say it changes the game. But we don't talk about when our player gets their 3rd foul in the 2nd quarter because they take a charge, you know, and don't get the call. Mm-hmm. And now the other team goes on a 12-2 run because your best player is sitting next to you. And so the other thing I'll add, and this is just a friend of mine gave me this tidbit, we want our players to play tough like Kobe. There's a lot of quotes out there where Kobe says he wouldn't take charges. And so, again, I know the hate's coming. I'm ready for it. I'll stand by my opinion there. But I view charges as a great solution for rim protection, but probably a little bit overvalued in the grand scheme of things.
Would you include diving on the floor for loose balls in that?
We do dive. I don't know. I'm super inconsistent. I'll just, you know, we're gonna go get that loose ball, but there is risk reward in that too, Tony. So you got me.
Okay. Yeah, I think the charge is sometimes like can be sometimes such a momentum play that it can kind of like almost be a symbol for a lot of the emotional components of the game. And that's probably why it gets kind of overhyped and overvalued, because it's like, it can be like, this team was so close to closing and this guy slid in and rescued it. And it's got like all those kind of like emotional touch points that make it get a little bit overvalued.
Does. And I think when you go look at that Raptors team, you know, Kyle Lowry leads the NBA in charges taken that year. He was rim protection for him. You know, they a lot of times didn't play with a big that played high above the rim, and he was an amazing rim protector for them in that playoff run.
A lot of his are super floppy too.
Yeah. Yes.
A lot of his are a little embellished.
Well, and that adds for us at the college level this year, there's a point of emphasis about not flopping. And if you have a kid that, even if the other team got charged with a flopping warning in the first half, and then some kid tries to jump in and make a big play late in the second half and gets called for a flop, then that double penalizes you. And so you end up really wishing that you hadn't emphasized the charges in that scenario there.
That would ruin a lot of the old school players' just total brand, this whole thing, you know?
Yep. All right. Last one that I have here. I don't know that this one's going to be very popular either, because I think a lot of coaches do this because they want to feel like they're doing their job, or they want to feel like they have a bigger impact than they probably do. Coaches think that scouting is more important than it actually is.
Doug.
And this is from my own I mean, I was one of them. I've been it for the last 9.5 years, and I don't know what happened this year, but this is my 10th year coaching at the college level, and I put far less time into scouting than I used to. Maybe selfishly, but I'm thinking I'm putting all this time into it, and we don't even execute on most of it. And it's not the guy's fault. It really is. I think probably coaches humorously have said this before, but we have a hard enough time remembering our own plays and remembering what we're going to do, let alone what the other team's going to do. And I'm talking about like knowing what horns play and out of bounds play they're going to run and all this other stuff. You know, there can be an argument made for I, as a coach, need to know that. I would encourage coaches more so to think about and to scout actions than they do the minute details that I know a lot of coaches at least used to put into it. You know, I don't care what horns play they're running or what out of bounds play they're running, but it does matter to me if they run a lot of staggers or, you know, ball screens, pin downs, flares, whatever. And that has changed the way we've practiced. We will practice guarding actions. So when I go to a particular scout, I can say to this team, we need to make sure that we know how to defend the staggers. Everybody remember how we defend it and go over that in a shoot around or whatever. So I'm not saying don't scout. I'm saying maybe think differently about how you scout and the detail with which you prepare your players or talk about it with your players.
I'll let Doug address that one.
Yeah, Tony, I do think that that's a great point about defending actions. You know, I think the more that throughout planning your practice and going through the year that you can get your base defense set, defending the actions that you're going to see the most, the better off you'll be. We do put a pretty high premium in our program on scouting, but at the same time, we constantly as a staff have to remind each other, it is not about what we know. It's what we can get the players to recall quickly and then go execute. And so figuring out what you're going to put a priority on in that scouting. if a team's ran an action or a play 2 times in 6 games, we don't need to guard that 35 times in our 3 practices leading up. And so I think that the teams and groups that do the best job of scouting tend to be the ones that are able to identify and prioritize things. And then to your point about guarding actions, have that base in place so that, they're going to run a stagger for a kid that shoots it. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it because it's been something we've been working on. And, hey, look, we're chase and offering help off the second screen, or whatever your base is, you can get into it. But it's good luck, bud. Those mentions, they're coming your way.
I've seen coaches who are really good at this, like good at scouting and like really, I think do a good job of intelligence work on their opponent as far as like intelligence gathering and things like that. And I would say if it makes them feel more confident going into the game and the players feel more confident going in the game and you have the manpower and the resources and all that to do it, then go ahead. But again, like I've said with my first point is you're doing all this work for a game that more often than not, the outcome was decided before we got off the bus. But if you're in there with a team who's equal to you, it could come down to just that one little kernel of information. This player doesn't like to go left, or this player, only takes 2 dribbles and then they pull up or something. There's little kernels of information like that might be useful when all other factors are fairly equal.
Mm-hmm. I think it's gotten
a lot terrible scouter. Like I just really didn't. I felt like we had enough things to work on, like with our own self, And I don't know if it helps you feel confident and prepared, then go for it. Do it big, I guess.
I'm finding too at our level, and it's not a high level of college basketball, but the scouting, the excuse for scouting is we want to take this away. And that a lot of times works when you're running a lot of plays. If you take away the play, then that means their play's blown up and they have to come up with another play. And that's where if you're a football coach and you want to take away that one thing, but for a lot of the offenses nowadays, there's a lot of concepts, and based off of how you take something away, they have a counter to it or react to it a different way. Mm-hmm. And to Randy's point, like if your team can't guard the basketball and they can't play help defense, and like I don't really care what kind of scouting you did, they're going to be able to counter whatever you take away from them. So if you're not solid in doing the basics of whatever it is, defense or offense, you're going to have a hard time anyways. And so I just think maybe modern basketball has kind of changed the way that we need to think about scouting and preparing for opponents.
Yeah. Tony, with that, I think it's knowing coverages. I think that's almost more valuable for your offense, knowing coverages and pressures, so that you're preloading those solutions to your players that you've probably already taught them, so that when you go play someone and they're going to side or black or whatever you call it, they're going to down a wing ball screen, your players aren't surprised the first 2 times that happens. Yeah. They're expecting it, and they've got the counter and solution ready to go. And so I do think there's so much value in that type of information for players versus, hey, when they go ear tug, they're going to go flare, stagger, whatever the action. Like, good luck in the game to your players, and ready to go to guard it. So,
that's good.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, I want to give you guys one last chance. If you want to make anybody else mad at you, did you have any extras, any bonus?
I had one all honorable mention, almost made
the cut. Ready.
The team meeting.
The players only, team only.
Yeah, like when I read like, oh, the so and so, like the Boston Celtics just had it called a meet. Like,
who cares?
It's over.
Yeah, who cares?
Like I know y'all are, like you're out of there. Like I think that would be my honorable mention that almost made the top 2. But like,
why don't
I can
you
remember
think that
coaching
works?
And like,
why don't you think that works with players? I'm assuming you're talking primarily about like the players only type meetings.
No, I'm talking about maybe one where like it's like, I don't know, maybe we're going through, there's a little drama or some infighting or something going on, and we need to have a team meeting to like clear the air. And like that to me sounds like a terrible idea. like we need to have a family meeting. No, we don't. Like, no, we don't. Like, I'm talking about that, just sort of like this idea that like we're gonna, I just never had much success with that. Like, I don't know. That's my answer. I just feel like if it's gotten to the point where we need to have a team meeting, then that's, boy, y'all are in trouble. And I also think too that like if you're, the person rowing the boat's too busy to rock the boat, like, let's just freaking work. How about that? Like, we don't need to talk. We don't need to meet. We need to get on that hardwood and freaking work. And then all this drama will go away. Y'all can all hate me. That's fine. Y'all fight amongst yourself. Well, we're going to work until you decide we all hate him. I'll do that for you. So then we all get along because we all hate him. Right? So we don't need to talk. We need to get on that hardwood.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times it sounds really great at the professional levels. I don't know that it even works any better at the professional levels. But to your point, probably for the younger levels, the problem is they're not very skilled in a certain area, which is the reason why they're not, or they're just not working hard at becoming better. I don't, like you said, I don't know that a meeting is going to fix that. Like I said, it sounds really great at the professional levels, but even then, I'd be interested to see how many reported team meetings actually lead to changes and good performance for a professional team.
Well, here's what I always have noticed. The Jacksonville Jaguars are having a team meeting. The Houston Texans are having a team meeting. And they're like, yeah, okay. Are the Patriots? No, they're not. They're out there on that grass and winning. That's what they're doing. I would say too that, like, like there is a faction of coaches who the sweetest sound in the whole world is their own voice. So like they love that meeting because they get to give one of, Coach Brotherton was talking about the Newt Rockne speech and also too that like this idea that like if we meet about it, we can. I just have found like just more gets said than done, and like nothing really productive most of the time comes out of meetings. I even read an article about this big hedge fund in New York City area that operates in the Wall Street world, and that's a results-based business. Like, we care about making money. That's it. And one of the leaders in that industry, his organization, they have a rule that like they did a survey and they asked all their employees how they felt about meetings, but they sort of hid those questions within some other questions. So you couldn't really tell that the survey was about like their staff meetings and their group meetings and all staff meetings and things like that. So they hid those questions among other questions. But what they were really trying to measure was how their employees, and they gave it to everybody from the leader of the hedge fund to the vice presidents on down to the number crunchers. And what they did was they found that some people like meetings, like they like them, like they feel their, and what they did was if you were one of those people who scored positively for meetings, even if you were like vice president of a division, if you like meetings, you immediately lost your ability to convene one. So like if you're a guy who likes, I think we need to meet tomorrow and talk about that. If like you, then in their organization, they said you immediately lost your ability to call a meeting, even if you were like a super senior person, because what they found was like they were just wastes of time. And really what they did was like placate people who just like to meet and be in front of a group and talk, which I'm talking a lot right now. So maybe I should surrender my ability to call a meeting. But I thought that was interesting that they like, and I thought of like, okay, could a basketball staff do that? Like the coach is always saying, coach, we probably need to have a team meeting to talk about that. Well, that's the last person who gets the authority to call it. Cause like, if we need to like get on that hardwood, it's what we probably need to do.
Yeah, that's good. Well, now that we've thoroughly aggravated quite a few people, we'll go ahead and finish it at this point.
It's kind of the role I play in the basketball space.
Anyways. That's good. Before we wrap things up, if you're wanting to increase your school's revenue or improve the fan experience, then Sideline Interactive is here to help. They're the leading manufacturers of scoring tables and video display boards for high schools and colleges around the country. To find out more about Sideline Interactive, visit sidelineinteractive.com. Before I completely wrap up, Coach Brotherton, why don't you tell people where they can connect with you? You share a ton of great stuff on Twitter.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Coach Brotherton, or shoot me an email. It's dbrotherton@coachesedge.com, and happy to share anything and everything that I have. And all I'll ask in return is that we talk about it or that you share something back with me. So,
great share of the game. I've known Coach Brotherton for a long time, and it's helped me out a lot. Appreciate all of you who joined us this week. If you missed any part of the live show, you can go back and watch that on the Radius Athletics YouTube page. Just search Hoops Forum on YouTube or Radius Athletics, and you should see the show there. Or if you're an audio person, you can listen to the podcast version of the show by searching A Quick Timeout. You'll find that there under Hoops Forum. For Randy Sherman, for Doug Brotherton, I'm Tony Miller. We'll talk to you again on the next Hoops Forum.